Welcome to another part of this Camera Raw course. Okay, so up to now, we've seen how to make the photo bigger, smaller, how to crop the photo, how to straighten the photo, and now we're going to move on to look at some settings. In this case, we're going to be looking at preferences down here, this line right here. Now you can see underlined, blue in some cases. When we click it, it will open a square where the workflow options that this file has for when we want to open it in Photoshop. A raw photo is a photo that has all of the information that the camera has picked up without processing it yet. We have to be the ones to process the photo so that photo looks nice. So when we're done processing, what we send to Photoshop to keep working on the photo has to do with what we see here. So here we can choose the color space, which is like the color language in which the photo is going to be in. Maybe we put it in Adobe RGB or sRGB, which is for use on the internet and, a normal printing. And the Adobe RGB is for when we need more colors in our photo. For some details maybe that with sRGB we just won't be able to see correctly. The color depth can be at 8 or 16 bits. If we're going to work with Photoshop, we wanted to have as much information as possible. The size of the file will be the original with the crop we've done or not. But if we want the file to have a determined size, we have to say here to resize to fit so it has a well-established size in height and width, so that the dimensions of the long side or the short side, the megapixels or the percentage. For example, we could work with an image we want to be at 3000 pixels wide and 2000 high. So we put in here, the long side, choose the pixels we want to work with, the width in this case, and we would get, the pixels high, so 3000 by 2000. Because we have a 3:2 proportion, it would be 6 million pixels. The resolution is going to be decided by the use we want to give this photo, if we're going to print or not. If we're going to print, we'd leave it at 300. If not, it doesn't matter. We can put it in 1 or 999 and there wouldn't be any kind of change in our photo. Seeing as we don't really know what use we're going to be giving our photo, we're going to leave it at 300 pixels per inch. And that way we can make sure that if somebody's going to print it, it will look good on its way out. In the next square, the output sharpening, we can use it to sharpen a photo if we're sure that this is the last step and that we know what we're doing. In this case, we hit it and we can't preview what's going to happen to the photo. And there's only 3 settings as well, for a screen, glossy, and for a matte paper. And then we have standard, high, and low. It doesn't tell us what it's going to be doing to the photo. We can't see the result. We can't judge if it's good or bad. So I recommend that you just turn this off now. Later, we can open the photo in Photoshop as a smart object, so we wouldn't lose the connection between Camera Raw and Photoshop. Or we could open it as a normal image. If we don't mark this, if we do mark it, this thing here, Open Object, will activate. If I unmark it, it'll change to Open Image. The difference between opening an object and opening an image in Photoshop is that if we decide to open an object, the connection between Photoshop and Camera Raw isn't lost. But if we decide to open an image, the connection between Camera Raw and Photoshop will be lost. Okay, so now we can hit OK and we can leave it off for now. And now, these settings with this crop that I've done of the photo and a clearer or a darker adjustment that we can make in the same photo, we'll have this crop with these adjustments in Photoshop when I hit Open Image. If I tell it to open the image, it'll open Photoshop, and once it's open, the photo will show up here on the screen, as you can see. And that photo will show up cropped, cleared, darker, and in one color or another depending on what I choose here in Camera Raw. As you can see in this photo, we can see it with these settings. If I open this photo in Camera Raw, I change the settings, and I hit Open Image, it'll open another document in Photoshop, coming from that photo with the new settings. And this way, I can have two photos from the same file with two different settings. Okay, I'm going to close this. I'm not going to save it, and I'm going to go back to the bridge to continue developing the photos. Okay, we've seen how these preferences, the workflow settings, interfere on the photo we're going to open in Photoshop. Everything we put in here is going to affect how the image appears in Photoshop, as well as the development we do. Another button we have here is the Save Image button. If I develop a photo and I put it in the settings, that we'll see later, and I crop it, and I want to save this photo because I like how it looks, well, instead of hitting Done, which would take those settings here, but would not be saving the file, apart from the settings here in the preview we have on the raw file, if what I want to do is to save a different file with a different format, I'll have to hit Save Image, and we'll get this window. I'll have to choose where the photo I want to save is going to be saved to. I choose the document name. That can be the same, it doesn't matter. In this case, I'm going to leave it as it is. Here I choose what kind of file I want to save. Maybe it's a JPEG, maybe it's a TIFF, Photoshop, or a digital negative. Here I would choose the hard drive, as it's going to go there in a DNG format or in a TIFF format or in a PSD format or a JPEG format. I'll choose, depending on the use I'm going to give the photo. Now I'm going to practice telling it that I want to save a JPEG file. I'm going to decide in metadata to save all of it. So I can save all of the info that's relevant to the camera and the shot. So that would be like the camera, the lens, the focus, aperture, etc. Or I can just tell it to save the copyright details or with the contact info as well. Or everything except for the information of how I develop the image. I'm going to leave it all on. And I'm going to choose the Jpeg quality. The higher the quality, the more the image is going to take up. The less quality, the less it's going to take up. But you will see some deficiencies in the photo, especially in soft gradients, like in the sky, like in this photo. It's recommendable that if the photo is for a website, we give it 6 or maybe a 7. And if we're going to print it, we should give it maybe a 9 or a 10. There's no real need for more. I'm going to do it as if I'm going to print. So I've given it a quality of 9. In the color space, as it's going to be for a simple print, in color space, I'll give it something similar to sRGB, which is simple and doesn't give any problems and is recommended for simple prints and for internet use. As it's a JPEG, I can't really modify the depth, so it's 8 bits and that's that. This is interesting. The square here allows you, as we saw earlier in the workflow, to change to fit into a determined space. For example, if we wanted a photo that was just, this one here, 2 million pixels, I can choose here megapixels. And I can make it save the photo at 2 million pixels. And in the resolution, we go from the original to a 2 million pixel image. Here we have the number in high and wide. We'll put the resolution at 300 pixels per inch because maybe someday or somebody wants to print it and wants to have a photo that size, 2 million pixels. So not very small, just big enough to make maybe a 10 by 15. If we wanted to make a photo of a determined size, we put here in dimensions centimeters, and, we tell it here that we want a 30 by 20, and then we get 30 by 20, and the number of pixels in brackets that we'll need for the file. That's 8.4 megapixels, million pixels, to make a 30 by 20 centimeter photo at a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. In the same way as with the workflow options, the output sharpening gives us various options for screen, glossy paper, matte paper. Then we have low, standard, or high. As in this case, we are thinking of printing the picture. We could choose here a quality of focus for glossy paper, for example. It's always advisable to keep it low because we don't control the real effect and the end result, and it could get like better. It might get a little clearer or better looking. So I've chosen this. Now, we would hit save, and what we would have here is a file like this one in JPEG with a size of 30 by 20 centimeters, and with a light mask of output sharpening to see the sides a little more defined. The raw file wouldn't suffer any changes because it's still here, and if I want to go to the original file, I just have to press these lines here and tell it that I want these values in default. Go back to the normal image, to the original image, and if I want to get rid of the square, click on the square and then hit escape. And then I'm not in cropping mode anymore. In this way, we'd have the original image again. I hit done, and I can see the original image again here in Bridge. When I make an adjustment to a photograph, whether it's a cropping or a development, that adjustment, as we've seen in the class before and in this one, this adjustment, when I hit done, will be previewed in Bridge. And the program will indicate that with this circle here. This circle here tells me that the photo isn't the original photo. It has a crop, an adjustment. It has an adjustment. If I also crop it and I hit done, we'll see the photo cropped. And it will tell me with the crop symbol. And if I see a photo has one of these symbols, it means that it isn't the original photo and has some kind of change to it. For example, this photo here doesn't have any of those symbols. That means it's the original photo as the camera took it. Now, if I want to go back and have the original photo, there's two ways of doing this. One is to open Camera Raw, going to the crop tool, hitting escape, and clicking on this thing here, telling me to reset the values. That's one way. Another way is through Bridge. Okay, so we right-click and we hit here at Develop Settings, clear settings that this photo has so that the settings get erased. This way we can go back to the original photo, whatever that may be. Here we hit Develop Settings, clear settings, and then we have the original photo. So the photo doesn't have any more settings or changes. This way we can see the raw files that may have some settings from those that don't have any adjustments yet. Now, when we open this file, we start from scratch. We make sure in the details panel that everything is at 0 so we can save it before, and we'll continue further looking at how we're going to develop the photo in the basic panel. So see you guys in the next class. Bye!